What were the intended goals by the 7th of October al-Aqsa flood operations? Let's look at them. In an interview with the Cradle, Ihsan Ataya, a member of the political bureau of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, told the newspaper that the resistance wanted to prevent the targeting of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem and other religious Muslim rights, stopping the Judaization of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the normalization of Israeli occupation of it. They also wanted to stop the harassment of Palestinian women. And the second goal of the operation was to ensure the freedom of thousands of Palestinian prisoners that are relinquishing in Israeli prisons, many of whom have not been through a trial. This explains the capture of Zionist soldiers to negotiate an exchange deal. Um, Operation Al-Aqsa Flood also achieved a major score in terms of the PR war, right? So, from a PR standpoint, Israel is doing really terrible right now. The images of massacred men, women, children, and elderly civilians in general is turning world opinion against Israel. We're seeing huge demonstrations across the world, even in like the countries that are like stone cold hardcore supporters of Zionism and the whole colonial project of Israel, like the UK and the United States. This is where some of the biggest demonstrations in the world against Israel have been held. In fact, in the United States, it was actually Jews, American Jews, that were leading a lot of these protests. So, shout out to them. I can't say the same for a lot of the Swedish Jews. Many of them have been very silent in this. At least the Jewish organizations in Sweden. So one of the reasons why people also why the world opinion has turned against Israel so badly as well is because Israeli politicians and military personnel, they're not even hiding their genocidal rhetoric anymore. I mean, if they're calling for the expulsion of Palestinians, they're referring to the people of Gaza as human animals and that no civilians exist in Gaza. And on top of that, there has been suggestions of completely moving the population into the Sinai so they can live in tents there. Obviously, the Egyptians do not agree to this, and I don't think they're going to allow it to happen either. Despite the friendly relationship Israel and Egypt have with one another, right? And one might ask, why does Egypt have such a angst grind against the Hamas government in Gaza? Well, there are several. Well, the main reason is because Hamas is a part of the Muslim Brotherhood. And in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood is considered like a terrorist organization, basically. Um, the Muslim Brotherhood, sorry about that, is a British creation, right? Um, and as Ihsan Ataya said, the resistance factions expected Israel to respond the way they responded, right? They have an official doctrine since 2006 where they so-called like mow the lawn, right? They respond disproportionately, and one of the reasons for that is because Israel is a very um, casualty averse army. Obviously, all armies want to minimize casualties as much as possible. Uh, this is logical. I understand that, but at the end of the day, you can't rely on technology too much either. In order to do the dirty work, you need infantry. You need men with guns. That's it. But Israel has already taken a high amount of casualties when they have entered Gaza, basically. and not even entered like the city core of it, right? The outskirts of Gaza, they've taken a lot of casualties. A lot of the tanks have been struck. So the Palestinian resistance factions knew what they were doing. They had probably prepared for this for quite some time. Um, and you know, if we look back at this issue, the Palestine issue, a couple of years back, nobody was talking about this anymore. This was off the radar. Like nobody was even considering a Palestinian state. Even the Arab states had moved on. Like they wanted to normalize their relationship with Israel, including Saudi Arabia, right? And this would ultimately put an end to a um, a Palestinian state. Um, the Iranians have always supported the Palestinians, but I think that they were still more focused on improving their economy because they have recently become part of the BRICS economic union, and the Iranian economy has unfortunately suffered a lot under sanctions, but also, let's be honest, a lot of mismanagement from poor economic reforms and privatizations and all this stuff. Um, Something that many Iranian politicians don't talk about, but I think you should be critical of the Iranian government in that regard. Definitely. Um, and there is a risk for a global war here, or at least a regional war, right? I think a world war even. Israel has always wanted a war with Iran. They know that they can't defeat Iran by themselves. Um, they can't do this conventionally because Iran has reached a military deterrence via its ballistic missile program that the North Koreans had to, um, help to set up. I'm actually working on another Substack article regarding Iran's military capabilities, a little bit, a summarized version. It's not too deep, but in this article or that article, I want to focus more on Iran's perhaps what do you call it? Intelligentsia. You know what I mean? How they work with their so-called proxies, as the West call it, like the Houthis or the Ansarullah, as they're known, with Hezbollah, with Palestinian Islamic Jihad, with the various different Shia militias in Iraq, such as the Hashat al-Shabi, you name it, or the Liwat al-Fatimiyun. Um, so if Israel wants to go to war with Iran, they have to get help via the United States. But the United States is not ready either to invade Iran. Invading Iran is a massive task. And they have done war simulations regarding this. And yeah, the Americans said they would lose every time. Plus, America has a huge issue with recruiting people into its army, right? They have incorporated a lot of like woke stuff and things of that nature, which is kind of like off-putting for a lot of, or a turnoff for a lot of perhaps more conservative people that want to join the army. I don't understand why you would want to join the U.S. Army, besides maybe its economic benefits for a person that's suffering economically, but from a patriotic standpoint, I can't see why you would want to support the U.S. war machine. Um, when Americans say I fought for freedom, the freedom of my country, um, how was the Iraqi people or the Afghan people, or how are the Iranian people or the Somali people or the people of Venezuela or Cuba or whatever? How are they a threat to your freedom? this ambiguous term freedom, by the way. I mean, we can discuss that in another video, but yeah, I can't see how these people are a threat to your freedom, right? In your imaginary world. Um, the IDF has, via propaganda, built up this grandiose picture of itself as almost like an invincible army, right? And I was listening to Andrei Martinov, Smoothie X12. Go and check his channel. I don't know him personally, so I'm not like sponsoring him per se, but he is also a very good military analyst. And this myth of Israel's invincible capabilities came from the 1948 creation, right? Where Israel defeated all these Arab states. Ironically, they actually used Soviet doctrine. That's what he said, which wouldn't surprise me because a lot of the Jews in Israel they came from Russia, right? They came from Ukraine, so obviously they had that military education. And a lot of the Arab armies were kind of weak in the beginning. They weren't as strong. But however, Israel is facing a very different opposition today. The greatest fear is Hezbollah in Iran, right? A large portion of the Israeli army is has been pulled to its northern border to Lebanon, and we can go into that a little bit later. We saw the weakness of Mossad. We saw the weakness of the IDF. On October 7th, basically. And we have also seen it even before that, like in 2006, the 33-day war. The Israelis were defeated by Hezbollah. Even when they tried to enter Gaza in 2014, I mean, just in 2 weeks, they took almost 60 casualties. That's a lot for 2 weeks. Something around that number, I think it was. So because they're casualty averse, they use a lot of brutality. And also because they view the Palestinians as subhumans, basically. I mean, let's not forget that this Zionist ideology is really no different in terms of like, it's really not that different from Nazism, really. But why is the average Israeli soldier such a softie in terms of, his fighting capabilities, right? Majority of Israelis live a very comfortable lifestyle on occupied land. They party a lot. They pretty much enjoy themselves. Palestinians, on the other hand, whether it be on Gaza or in the West Bank, live under very difficult circumstances, right? These are people that have seen brutal violence, the deaths of their loved ones in front of their eyes on regular basis. Let's not forget, on the West Bank, there's a lot of violence against Palestinians going on. 100 plus Palestinians have been killed there. These rabid, fanatic, right-wing religious extremists, these Orthodox right-wing Jews, have been armed by the Israeli state to go and kill Palestinians and steal their land. They burn people alive. I mean, they treat people like shit, basically. Sorry for, using that terminology, but it is what it is. But all this trauma, all this oppression obviously creates, and all this dire living situation in terms of poverty and water scarcity and stuff like that, it creates a very different character. And it creates somebody who is willing to die for a righteous cause. Ihsan Ataya also mentioned Hezbollah. Will Hezbollah open up a new front against the Zionist entity? Well, Nasrallah already said that they have. basically. They open up since October 8th, but I would say it's a very low intensive war, right? Many speculate that Hezbollah is trying to like manage the escalation, because Lebanon is not ready to go to war. Lebanon is a very it's in a very bad economic state. The Lebanese public is not willing to sacrifice themselves at the moment. I would argue perhaps maybe that is actually the best moment. I don't know. Um, I mean, look at Yemen. Yemen have launched already a bunch of attacks on Israel. Perhaps not the most like sophisticated ones because of the distance and all these things, but I have to say to the Yemenis, like they are extremely dedicated, very, very good peoples. I have to say they are very dedicated to fight against Zionism, against colonialism, against imperialism. I admire that with them, and they're in a way worse predicament than the Lebanese people, right? But of course, I'm not saying that Lebanon should go to war against Israel, but and the reason for that is that, like I said before, Israel cannot defeat their enemies uh, in terms of conventional capabilities, but they have the Samson option, which is Israel's nuclear weapons. And this makes Israel a threat to world peace. But only time will tell if the genocide of the Palestinians will evolve into a much larger scale war. It seems to evolve to that because the latest reports just yesterday, right? Uh, the attacks from Hezbollah has, and Israel obviously, because Hezbollah responds to Israel's attacks against civilian targets in Lebanon. They have increased their rocket counterattacks against the Israelis, and even I think it was in the Cradle or Middle East Eye, they say that the American administration is actually warning Israel to not escalate the conflict with Hezbollah right now, and they have come, a disturbing language has come out from Israeli military people and politicians that what they do in Gaza will be done in Beirut. But only time will tell. I believe, though, a Palestinian state will be established after this. At least a two-state solution. I'm not a proponent of that personally. I think Palestinians and Israelis should live in one state, democratic country, where everybody has equal rights and responsibilities. But if a two-state solution can stop a war, then let's go for that. Yeah, well, we'll see how this situation evolves, and let's stay tuned, everybody. Thank you. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. I see you in the next one.